Hey all, it's AJ here from Sports Chaplaincy South Africa. Really amped for our call-up podcast with pro rugby player Athi Mayinje. Athi relates his story of how as a young up-and-coming rugby player with the talent and ambitions for higher honours, he threw absolutely everything at building a successful career in the game. He describes the toll that a myriad of injuries had on his progress on the path that he chose for himself. A path that eventually led to the realisation of using his talents and status not to enrich himself, but as a platform to touch the lives of the less fortunate in the challenged communities where he came from. If you're enjoying our work, give us a like and a share on your socials and find us on all the top podcast apps. Search for the Call Up Podcast, where faith meets sport and life.
The Call Up Podcast, where faith meets sport and life. This is brought to you by Sports Chaplaincy South Africa.
So welcome to episode 6 of the Call Up podcast. We've had a cricketer, we've had a footballer, we've had a track and field athlete, we've had a field hockey player, we've had a Paralympian, and lots of people have been saying to me, when are you going to have a rugby player on this? And some people have even suggested that because the Pommy is hosting it and we are so bad at rugby at the moment, that's the reason I haven't dared have a rugby player on the Call Up podcast. But I'm really excited today because none of that is true. But I'm excited today not only because we can avert those fears by having our first pro rugby player on the podcast, but because we've got a young man who's using that platform, his sporting platform, for a greater purpose. And I know, working with many young sports people, one of the things they tell me is that they not only want to provide for their families through sport, but they also have a desire to make a difference and give back to their communities. So if you're one of those people, then you really need to listen to this podcast today. So I'm delighted to have Athi Mayinje with me today. He's presently playing for the EP Elephants, but he's also established his own MPO, Love Sport Africa, that's doing incredible, deep transformational work through sport in the township of Motherwell in the Eastern Cape. Athi, welcome to the Call Up Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Rev. Thank you for having me, and it's an absolute honor and a privilege.
Well, I think the honor and privilege is going to be not just for me, but anybody listening to your story today. I think I better just explain to everybody why you're calling me Rev. Some sports people call me Bruce, which is my name. Some call me Brucey. Some call me Mr. Bruce, even when they're like 30 years of age because they've known me for so many years. And some people like you call me Rev. And I need to explain to people that goes back to my time in England at Leicester City. The players and the coaches and the staff there always used to call me Rev, as in Reverend. And that's kind of stuck. So Athi, I thank you for reminding me of back home in the UK when I first began my sports ministry journey. So thanks for that. But let's dive straight in before we get to like the heart of your story. I think a lot of people would be interested to know about how you started playing rugby. And, you know, your early years are, you know, you're brought up in a township, you're attending a township primary school, and the opportunities to play rugby are often limited in that context. You don't always have access to rugby. So tell us how you end up being introduced to the game.
Rev. So I think for me, growing up, I was born in KwaZulu, in Port Elizabeth, Babesa. It's a township just near Zwide and New Brighton. And luckily for me, sports has been a big part of my life since then. I remember trying every and any sport that we could play. And we generally played the sports that we used to watch on TV. So that was your soccer, your small poles, and your cricket. So we used to use a tire, put a rock in the tire so that it's stable, get a plank, and if you had a tennis ball, you was good as gold. So a tennis ball or any sort of ball, you were the CEO of the street. It was good as gold. And I was fortunate to get my sporting background from there. We never played a lot or any rugby, to be fair, because again, rugby was only playing on Super Sport then, and we didn't really know much about the game. And it was only when my mother married and I moved to Bloota Bay which is a suburb just on the outskirts of PE, that I could go to Blue Water Bay Primary, that I got to experience the game of rugby for the first time. And I was at about age 8 then, Rev.
Yeah, so it's moving. It's actually moving, isn't it, to a community where there was access to rugby. I mean, I just wonder how many Athis are out there who never get that opportunity to play the sport and discover their God-given talent. But maybe that's something for later, because I'm sure that's been one, if not one amongst many of your motivations for giving back to your community. But you clearly have a talent for playing rugby, and that lands you a scholarship, doesn't it, at Grey School? And I know you have a really successful schools career. You show a lot of promise. But when we've had conversations before, you've shared one particular highlight I would love for you to share with our audience.
Yeah, Rev. So I was fortunate enough to be given a platform and the opportunity to attend in a prestigious school like Grey High School, which is one of the best schools in Port Elizabeth. And yeah, I mean, from there, I went on to represent Eastern Province from under 12 right through to seniors. And yeah, I think, Rev, the story you're talking about is one that I hold dear to me, because it stems 3 years in the making. I was in grade 10 and under 16 year, and I got a bad knee injury that went from you'll only be out for 2 weeks, you'll be back within 2 months. It ended up being 2 years, which I was sidelined,
Wow, no
and
rugby for 2 years.
no rugby for 2 years, Rev. And when you're in that situation, you go through a whole range of emotions. You first eager to come back, then you realize, the reality of the situation, and then come to a compromise, with your gift or your talent. I remember nearing the time in which I was coming back, I remember just thinking, if I can just play third team and then maybe just get a cap, just get a cap, just one first team cap, just to say, that I fulfilled part of my potential, and I wasn't just a player that was brilliant in the junior years. And then, everyone is talking about you like you passed on, when the young kids come through, they say, yeah, that guy used to be good, or that guy used to be able to do this, or, for me, just getting that one cap would have been a realization of, part of my potential, and part of the obligation of coming to a school like this, is to better the rugby program. So that cap meant a lot. And it was 2 years onwards that I got an opportunity to play in my first derby day as a first team player. It didn't take the whole season. It was our first derby of the year, and we played against Paul Roos. And I remember just, being overwhelmed with emotion. And, the whole game plan was that we're going to go out there, we're going to look to stomp on authority, and we're going to look to really, we run amok. That's what we called it that year, or those times, is that every time we went on the field, we wanted to run amok, and we wanted to, yeah, blow anyone out the park. And Rev, we were about second half, we were we were 26-0 down, to
26
Paul
nil
Roos.
down, and just to paint the picture, this is at Paul Roos in Stellenbosch, is that right?
Yes, yes, yes. It was
So,
on the 14.
so anybody who knows anything about schools rugby will know that they don't have a few people; they have the whole school there. The crowd is huge, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
rugby is taken incredibly serious. One of the elite rugby schools in South Africa, and you're 26 nil down, and you've also got the crowd against you. What happened next?
Yeah, and then Rev, I mean, it wasn't going to plan. And the first team stands was the first team Porter stand was singing, "Where's your first team?" to our boys, um, because we clearly hadn't showed up, and the scoreboard agreed with them. But there was a moment, Rev, where now Springbok scrum off, Herschel Yanchis. I always remind him when I get the opportunity to. He picked up the ball and he went blindside, and it was just myself and another teammate of mine. and he kicked it over us, Rev. And I remember that moment because there was a split second to make a decision. It was either I throw my hands up and say I gave my best. He kicked it over me. I tried to charge him down. Didn't happen. Oh, well, not my problem. Or he kicks it over, and regardless of what happens or the bounce of the ball, I just turn around and chase. And the one thing that made me turn around, Rev, the one thing that made me turn around was the simple fact that I believe that there's a way to lose. And shouldn't be because of a lack of effort,
Mm.
And when you're an athlete and you're always going out or into a game, expecting to do your absolute best, expecting the best outcome, but when that doesn't happen, then, who are you then? And I always
And
believe
it's
that
so
circumstance.
easy, isn't it, to drop your standards? Have a pity
Yeah,
party, drop your standards. The game's over. What's the point of risking anything?
yeah, Ref. So I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna turn around. And the ball was bouncing and it was sitting up nicely. And all he needed to do was just dive on it. And I've been waiting for the soccer moment for all my life. And as he was about to dive on it, I went for a slide tackle and was able to dislodge the ball under his arms.
Praise the
And
Lord for your township soccer schooling, right?
yo, Rev. I mean, I would have preferred a bicycle kick, Cassie style. But I mean, a nice Nemanja Vidic tackle, as I said to the boy, had to do. And yeah, Rev, that sparked the comeback and rallied the boys. And before you knew it, we were 27-26, no, 27-26 up to win the
Wow.
game. So yeah, it's one of the most special memories. And yeah, it was just one of those moments that I will treasure and remember for life, and I can always pinpoint to that split second decision where you can easily just throw your hands into the sky and accept that it's just not your day, or you decide that regardless of it's your day or not, it won't be because of a lack of effort from your side, and you were able to pull it back that day. On another day we lose by 40 points, but that day we were able to pull it back, and yeah, for a first game back, it was a pretty special moment.
Awesome stuff. A reminder that moments can change a game, move the game in a different direction. It also gives you a great bit of banter with a fairly well-known rugby player in South Africa, doesn't it? But maybe I should move on, because if he's listening to this, he might want to come on the podcast to give his side of the story. But
Yeah, maybe it should, Riff.
yeah, maybe should send this to him. Although he might see that as a rag to the bull. But that's a great story, and I think there's a lot in that for anybody, whether you're a sports person or not. Just about always giving your best, regardless of the circumstances, whatever your best might be in that moment. But you eventually turn pro. You play for a number of years for the EP Kings, and then COVID strikes. And I know this had a huge impact on lots of sports people, but for you, there were a lot of big decisions to make at this time about your rugby, about your studies, about your future. And when you've talked about this before, you've described this moment in your life as feeling like a traffic jam. Would you just like to explain that to people, and say a little bit about what was going on in your life, how you responded to this traffic jam, and ultimately how God worked in this time to bring you to where you are now?
Just on the traffic jam analogy, so I'll use my sporting career, try and tie that in. So in the beginning, as I said, at school we were quite successful. We beat Taurus, we beat Great College in matric. I went on to play Craven Week. We actually won Craven Week for the first time in 30 years. So for an Eastern Province side, that's a piece of history that we hold on to, or that's never been achieved, in 30 plus years. So it was a pretty special moment. I ended up getting a contract, King's Academy, and then went to NMU as well, got a bursary or scholarship to study there, to study law. And I remember, Rev, with the traffic jam, so when you get into your car in the morning, you get in there and you know exactly where you're going, the destination, the estimated time of arrival, you know, everything is within your control,
Mm.
and there's a certain element, there's that excitement to it. It's a new day, it's a new beginning. So you're getting into your car, everything is going as it should. You're playing music, you're
No,
singing,
what you should
you're
be saying
running,
is you're listening to the Call Up podcast, is what you should be saying, Athi.
you're listening to the Pull Up podcast. You got the volume up, and things are looking good. Potentially you'll get to where you want to go, and you'll get there quite comfortably, the way you envision and planned it to be. And then you come up and you see the first signs of traffic. There's quite a few cars on the road. It's a bit more than I expected, but you still have that excitement, that, oh well, I left nice and early, I should get there with still 5 minutes to spare. I wanted to get there 10 to 15 minutes earlier, but I should still make it. So you still have that excitement there. You're still playing the music, maybe turned it down a bit, and now it's still within your control. Because you made provision for it, you still feel as though, I should get to where I need to be eventually. And then you drive a bit further, Reb, and then you start seeing that there's actually a bit more cars than I anticipated. But now we actually stopped. The progress isn't flowing as it was 10 to 15 minutes ago. Now we've actually stopped, and now you're moving slower and slower and slower. And then you start looking at in front of the traffic, and you realize you actually can't see what is happening in the front. So you're actually not sure as what is causing this traffic jam. So now all of a sudden, you're not sure whether you're going to be here for 10 more minutes or you're going to be here for 5 more hours.
Sounds
You
like
know,
Joburg on a Monday morning.
thank goodness I don't live in Joburg, man, bro. So now that certain element of uncertainty starts breeding doubt. Now you're starting to feel as though, yes, but it's not in your control anymore. And then you move maybe another 5 to 6 paces forward, and then you start to realize actually you're no longer gonna make that time in which you estimated to be actually at that actual placing. Now, yeah, so you end up just being conflicted as to what to do next, because you feel as though you need to do something. Now you get to a point where you feel as though any movement is better than no movement. Whereas
So
I
what do you
said,
do?
I said,
So what do you do? Jump out of your car and start walking?
exactly. You jump out your car, you start running. You start walking, you start running. It feels a bit better than just sitting in the car, because you're technically working towards, that ideal destination. You're actually moving forward instead of being stationary.
So my question, Ati, is I think everybody's got that picture. So how does that relate to your story? This COVID moment, decisions about your career, about your studies, about your future.
So now, Rev, I thought with COVID, um, there was a big opportunity. As much as it was a time of turmoil, a time of adversity. I always felt like during those times, that's when your leadership shines through. That's when the light shines brightest is in the dark. And similar to that Paul Russ story, where we were down 26 points, and I felt as though regardless of that, there's an opportunity, there's a moment to step up, and I had to do it. I felt like if it's going to be someone, it's going to be me. And it was something similar at this point as well with COVID, because it leveled everything. It felt as though now is the opportunity to come out the blocks, first, or come out the blocks fastest when things open up again. So I started investing everything into my rugby. I left NMU, I left the varsity, and I decided, you know what, I'm gonna give this rugby thing a full go. I don't want any regrets when it's time for me to hang up the boots and say, but you never actually gave it a full go. So I left, and I went to Valcom. And as soon as I got to Valcom, my father passed. And when my father passed, I reiterated everything, Rev. it told me that you only got one life to live. Give it your best shot, and don't live with any regret, because you don't know, we are on borrowed time. You don't know when your number is called. And yeah, Rev, I joined athletics program. I was in the gym probably from 7 to about 5, and obviously your lunch and your meals in between. But I was going 5 to 6 sessions a day. I'll be going home, driving home tired at like 7 p.m. And there'll be a voice that says, no one else would do it. And then I'll take a detour, and I'd go to the staircase close to where I live, and I'd run for an hour and a half, and it's like Man United's playing at 9 p.m. and I'm trying to squeeze in 2 more sets of stairs at 8:50, and it's dark. It's just you and your thoughts, and all you can think about is just the vision, your destination, how this is an opportunity, for you to then get back on track and get back on course.
So I think anybody listening to this is going to say what they're hearing is you've decided the destination and you've decided what time you're going to get there. You've given up on your education and you're going to throw yourself wholeheartedly into having this rugby career, and you are doing everything. You are spending yourself in the process of making yourself as good as possible. You've made this decision. You've left home. So what happens when you make your debuts for the Griffins? Is that right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I felt like I was in the best physical shape of my life. I really felt as though, this is going to be my big break. Playing for a new team in a new city, you know, um, just, yeah, everything that comes with that, that new beginning. And exactly now this is going to be, the stepping stone to that destination, to that goal, to that dream. And yeah, first minute, Rev, first touch, my first touch of the ball. I hit a nice goose step, into a gap. I'm like, yes, that's exactly how I envisioned it. That's exactly how it was gonna go in my mind as well. And it was a 2-on-1, myself with the ball in hand, and my winger next to me, and it was just a fullback left. And I decided to pass to the winger to score an easy try, and I got tackled late, and that tackle went directly to my knee, the knee that has been injured, or that was injured previously when I was still in high school, and took me out for 2 years. And it hadn't caused any problems, any long-term problems since 2012 per se. So now it's 2021, and yeah, COVID opens exactly as I envisioned it, hit the gap, put the winger away, good start to the game, and then I get that late tackle, and then I couldn't get up. And, having had knee injuries before, or worse knee injury before, you sort of have that optimism that, last time I wasn't able to wobble, or if I can wobble off the field, that means, but there's something wrong, but it means maybe it's not too bad. And then went to the doctor, went to get the scans done, scans came back, and that was my season.
Wow.
Um,
So you've made this huge decision. You've got out the car in the middle of a traffic jam. You've decided your destination. You've decided how you're going to get there. You've sacrificed hugely, and a minute into your debut, it's basically over.
yeah, Rev, as you're saying it now, I felt like the more movement that I do, the quicker I'm gonna get to the destination. Where Whereas the traffic jam was there, there's plenty cars in front of me. But I felt like if I can get out and just start running, eventually the hard work, would
So
would yeah,
yeah, so yeah, I think we get that, and it's amazing that you were doing all of this. But what I'm hearing at you, and I think a lot of people are hearing, is you decided. So what does God do in this moment? How
exact.
what does He do in this this dark valley? How does He work in your life in this moment that brings you to the place where you're now doing this incredible work in your community?
Yeah, Rev. I think for me the realization came when just one night after training, after just rehab in the gym, I parked the car in front of the gate, and I probably sat there for about 45 minutes, and I just, yeah, I broke down, and I just asked God. I get it. I get it. All of this for the past 2 years, it was all, I felt like it was on me. If it's gonna happen, it's gonna be because of me. It's gonna be because of my effort. It's gonna be because of my work ethic. Whereas at that moment, I surrendered. I said, there's no way, and God, if this journey, if this destination, is not what you want from me, then I'm fine with that. If this is not meant to be, if that destination in which I was wanting to reach and I was running towards is not the one that you have planned for my life, then I'm content with that. And it was a tough conversation, Rev. It was a tough conversation. All that I've dreamt about, all that I've been working towards, since I touched the ball, since I realized that, there's a gift behind this oval ball, and having it in hand. It's been this one dream that, get to that destination, reach the fullest potential, get to the pinnacle of the sport. And all of a sudden to say, actually, that was maybe all me, you know,
Mm.
and I'm now surrendering this gift and saying, God, if it's meant to be, you'll take me there. But I know for certain that it won't be because of my effort, but because of your will and your glory. And I decided to come back home, Rev. I decided to come back home because during that COVID period, I had planted myself in a soup kitchen. And in that soup kitchen, I got to see, the strife and turmoil that basically is the reality, of people in the township. And the mother of the soup kitchen always wanted me to join, and become a director and really get involved in the soup kitchen. And I told her, Mama, I'm just here to serve, But out of that, I saw the opportunity, and I saw where I fit in best, and that would be on the side of the field, next to the field. That's where I wanted to give back the most. And through that, when I had that conversation with God, everything just said, just come back home. And it felt like I knew what I needed to do, Rev. I knew what I needed to be. And it was basically where I am now.
So what I'm hearing is God brings you to this moment, surrender. You've been doing it your way, son, but you know what? I got a better way. And He gives you His heart for the poor. And then He says, I'm going to use your rugby, but not in the ways that you'd imagined. That's pretty powerful stuff. And maybe we need to jump right there. I know we could spend a lot of time exploring this moment in your life, and it's a really powerful testimony, Ati. You know, we have our plans, yeah, but if we build our house in our own way, the scriptures are really clear. We build in vain, and what I'm hearing is God graciously brought you to that moment of surrender. You've ended up starting Love Sport Africa. You're working in the township of Motherwell. Just tell us a little bit about some of the challenges in Motherwell. Your heart for the poor, your love of rugby coming together, and it meets in the community of Motherwell in the Eastern Cape. Tell us about the challenges there.
Rev, I think, the most prevalent one that many would attest to is the fact that, in the township, absent fatherhood is a theme. And it's a prevalent theme where, you know, children are being raised by single mothers, and there's a lot of parent or mother led houses where the fathers are absent. And for me, that sparked that interest in getting involved and creating a program called Rugby for Women Empowerment, because I could now understand that, had I not touched that ball at that age of 8, I wouldn't have realized, that there's a gift, within that. There's a superpower within that. And I wouldn't have gotten the scholarship to a Grey High School. I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity, to go to university and study for a degree. I wouldn't have gotten an opportunity to put food on the table, because of the sport. And with that said, I understood that about 80% of the schools in the township don't have sporting programs.
Mm.
There's not even an element of play. There is none. and I decided to throw myself wholeheartedly into that. And I decided to start, a uniformed, quality and consistent sporting program, because one of the biggest lacks out of children in the township is the lack of consistency. Yes, we will get the sporting clinic here today, but then they don't come again for the next 6 months. So I really wanted to plant myself and create an environment where, I could drive quality rugby coaching, but also support the individual holistically. And I felt as though, you know, with this Rugby for Women empowerment program, I'd be able to really give these young girls an opportunity, or the same opportunities that I was able, to attain just by touching a rugby ball. And just firsthand, Rev, just seeing a child catch a ball and run and realize she's fast,
Yeah.
you know, just the sheer beauty of something like that had she not touched that ball, she would have never have realized that she's got superpower speed, and that's just one of the testaments that I've been able to witness. But also, Rev, just the plight and the environment in which they're growing up in, is not one that's conducive. Couple months ago, we had one of our girls' house get broken into. They took all their belongings, and the father was shot right in front of the family, and he lost his life. May his soul rest in peace. But that's the situations in which we're dealing. That's
Yeah.
the reason why, we're doing what we're doing. Stories like those, Rev, it might scare a lot of people off, but for myself and for our team, it's something that we knew what we were getting into. We this is why we're actually here, and not necessarily at a more better rugby school or coaching there where you can get, something in return. So yeah, as much as it's a daunting task, when things like these happen, it reinforces, that calling, it reinforces that purpose. And it's not something that we run away from, but it's something that we ran towards, and we want to continue to run towards, is really shaping and changing the life of these young ladies holistically, and using rugby as a vehicle, to bring about that change.
Wow. Actually, that is incredible, and I think anybody listening to this now can hear this leaks out of you. God has placed His heart for the poor and for this community, for these women, you know, in your heart, and it's definitely the Lord's doing. And He's using your passion and your love for rugby to engage with some of the very deep challenges in the community. It's wonderful to hear how God is using your platform for a really rich kingdom purpose. And as I say, that leaks out of you. Anybody listening to that can testify to that. And I'm sure you can tell many stories. And we just haven't got time today, but maybe we'll do a podcast in the future where you can come back and tell us some of the stories of hope. But how can, one of the things I want to do is make sure that we put a link in the notes at the end for people who want to connect with your work. It's Love Sport Africa. But very quickly, just tell people how they can maybe connect with your work. Is there a website? Is there a contact email they can go to if they're interested in finding more about your work?
Yes, Rev. Thank you for this opportunity. Yes, they can contact us through lovesportafrica@gmail.com. That's our email address. And then we are on social platforms. So we are on Facebook and Instagram. And then they can also check our website on lovesportafrica.com. Yeah, Rev. So
That's great. Well,
yeah.
we'll make sure that is in the edition notes that are attached to this. But I ask all the sports people this. This is the Call Up podcast. Uh, but we began our Call Up journey with a prayer book. I know that you've got a copy. I know that you've used it. But one prayer or one theme in the Call Up prayer book that has been a blessing to you.
Yeah, Rev. I think my favorite one is the prayer before training. And it's one that I use very often, and it's one that I've even added my own touch to it, because I found it just inspiring. And I actually used it this weekend in our game against Kenya. And it basically epitomized everything, that any athlete would want to achieve on the rugby field or any field, to be, for example. So yeah, it goes, I praise you for your mercy in Jesus Christ, which means I can offer my body to you as a living sacrifice. That's Romans 12, verse 1. And then it goes on to say, I thank you that this mercy means that I can know you, love you, and use my whole life, including my physical abilities, for your glory. As I prepare for this training session, please receive my body's presentation as a living sacrifice. May it be holy and acceptable to you as I train in your honor. I commit this training session, its every second, and its results to you. In Jesus' strong name I pray. Amen. So yeah, Rev, that's my fighter. That's the one I normally go with, and I remixed it when it goes, please receive my body's presentation as a living sacrifice. I always add on and my effort, as an offering of gratitude for the gifts in which you've placed within me. So
So I
yeah,
tell you
the
what,
body.
Ati, we'll do a deal here because we're working on a revised and expanded edition of the Call Up Prayer Book because we pretty much exhausted the 8,000 plus copies that we had printed, and we need to do a new edition. You've got to send me that little remix because let's add that remix to the next edition.
That'll be awesome, Rev. Yeah, definitely I'll send it to you.
That's great stuff. And then finally, the locker room worship song. What's your locker room worship song?
For me, it's Something Has to Break by Kira Sherd. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's a powerful song, and for me, being a person that enjoys their music, just the emotion, and it gets me up. It gets me up for any day, any challenge, and it reminds me that eventually something has to break. And yeah, yeah.
That's awesome, Ati. Just want to thank you once again for being on this podcast. I think there's been a lot of meat in that for people to reflect upon. I think the biggest one for me is we can so focus on our destination and miss out if we're not careful on God's destiny for our lives. And it's just wonderful to hear how God has said, hey, this is the destiny I have for
Mm.
you. We'll be praying for you as you continue to minister in the community of Motherwell. And I pray that many, many resources would come your way. Keep on loving the folks there. Keep on seeking God's mercy and God's justice and grace for that community. And those of us who know you'll be praying for you and supporting you from afar. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you very much, Reverend. Thank you for the platform. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Ati, for joining us on this podcast. We appreciate it. God bless you.
God bless, Rev.
The Call Up Podcast, where faith meets sport and life. This is brought to you by Sports Chaplaincy South Africa.
The Power of His Dream brings you here. LIA Productions.